razor, a fingernail down to the knuckle. Both thumbs are strained, this is the kind of pain that can drive a man insane. Make them both these buckle, I'm a wicked motherfucker since 03. Verified hardcore OG. I've been known for bringing weapons with me to the venues to try to keep it in mind if you approach me. I don't give a fuck who gon' see. Bitch, you gon' bleed. I don't give a fuck if you trap or grow weed. Match your known fee, master flow scheme. If I'm coming, it's a fact you won't see. Only way that I can't kill it is if it don't bleed. They acting, these rappers know me. Mad Max, black machete, and black mask on. Fuck killing them softly, I'm killing them slowly. That's villainous.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 15 of HorrorCorridor, and we're here with the wild thing, sick hop man himself, Mad Max. What's up?
Yeah, boy, what's good, man? Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey, of course, man.
I've been seeing it around. Like, I've been seeing the name HorrorCorridor and a couple of different interviews, and I've been very curious. So I'm glad you brought me on, man. This is good shit. And clearly, you are obviously, like I was saying before, a consumer of the culture. Just I'm seeing all the different stuff you got, and in particular the Bad Taste poster, because that's a fucking deep cut. You know what I'm saying? I fucks with that.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, I don't remember exactly where I saw that movie, but when I seen it, it was crazy. Where it was just, this is an interesting movie because it's not even so much of how good or bad of a movie it was. It's the fact that Peter Jackson made it at the beginning of his career, and then eventually went on to make Lord of the Rings, which to me at the time was a crazy realization for the fact that, like, you can start that low budget. And as I'm saying, Peter Jackson did Dead Alive too, right?
Yes. And Meet the Feebles, yeah.
Well, no, which also, funny story about that, as a kid, I never actually rented it, but I remember I always, at the video store, my parents would let me rent, like, you know, horror movies a lot of the time as I got older, and Dead Alive was one that was in the back on the wall. I always used to look at it, but as a kid, there's the scene where his ribs or whatever it is are coming all the way out. It was just, as a little kid, I was like, fuck, I think that might be a little too much. But then as I got older, I think I've seen it all the way through once, but the lawnmower scene is my favorite for sure.
Oh, fuck yeah. And the pudding scene makes me fucking gag still.
Oh no, for sure. No, that's how you know that shit was done properly, for the fact that this much later, it's still that unsettling. Like, you want to know who else was good with that? Was and he just put another movie out recently. David Cronenberg.
Oh yeah.
The body horror OG with fucking with like scanners and Videodrome. I like The Brood. I plan on sampling Videodrome at some point, just because, I mean, obviously, but...
Oh, dude, you could do a total concept song on that, too, just about how violence infects people through, like...
That's the idea, man. Yeah. Like, there's so much... This is one of the reasons, not for nothing, that I love horrorcore the way that I do, because it's like some of the, like, material and some of the artists may be a little bit sophomoric and unrefined, but at the same time, there is so much depth and profundity in horrorcore that I feel like most people don't really see at face value, because there's all the different violence and craziness. But, like, there really is a lot of art and meaning within the horrorcore genre. And it's funny to me, because rap is considered legitimate, horror movies are considered legitimate, but horrorcore music is still very much like, I don't really know the right way to... My son's fucking with me.
Oh shit.
Anyway, no, he might have been, the window was open.
People talk about it like it's deplorable, almost like
exactly,
or like it doesn't exist at all.
No, exactly. And I mean, to me, I think that's also, you know, most of the rest of the world, I think, feels that way about horror in general, and I'll tell you why I think that. October in America, at least, I don't know if Halloween is, I'm pretty sure it's celebrated around the same time all around the world, but it's not like that's the month when you can put your horror movies out. And that is not to say that they don't put horror movies out during the rest of the year, but that's the only time when it feels like anybody else other than the core horror community are watching it. And the other reason I believe that's true is because if you look at the majority of horror movies that are made, a lot of them are kind of like B-level, if not self-funded, independent films. And that speaks to the idea that they do it because they love it. They're not in it because they expect to make a lot of money doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, and especially when you think about it, there's only a few horror icons when you think about it. Horror actors, there's only a few that are really, held in a high regard. Back in the day, horror was a much more legitimate genre.
Oh, yeah.
And since it became more violent, that's a little bit less so, which obviously that's Hollywood being hoity-toity, but fucking the idea, like Sid Haig was a storied actor, one of the best of his time. And if you watch any of the older movies that he did, Vincent Price, another perfect example. Bela Lugosi, so many of these actors that were really amazing actors that, did these well-known horror roles, but also it's not like that's the only acting they ever did. They were really good actors.
Mm-hmm.
And horror actors don't really get that. Like the horror, I mean, Rob Zombie, let's be real, is probably the number one horror celebrity on earth outside of like, I mean, unless you want to consider people like Ari Aster, like celebrities.
I would say he's the number one when it comes to people like having no shame in liking his movies as horror films.
All right. I mean, I think that's fair.
Because it's like a little bit classier, I'd say. So people.
I don't know, man. I got to be honest with you. I think there's more story, and I think there's more, whether or not character development, just sentimental and emotional development. Like there's more going on.
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, his movies are. But like, there's a lyric in I'm trying to remember what. Yeah, no, it was Ape Shit with fucking Fams and Stray, where I was like, making it look like you died in a movie by Ari Aster, you sorry bastard. And fucking, because that's like, if you look at even Midsummer, which was, comparatively speaking, not all that crazy. There's the one dude, he's like fucking like all laid out, he's like.
Yeah, dude. I mean, they're technically splatter movies when it comes to the violent parts, but
for sure, he smashed the fucking dude's face in with a hammer, and the girl killed herself with a car and her parents.
I think a lot of people have learned from his movies too that like when you do the slow burn, that's when the violence is really impactful because you don't expect it. I mean, another guy that does that is Ty West, who did The Sacrament and House of the Devil.
You want to know what? I don't know if I've seen those. I'm going to be completely honest with you, man.
He just did a movie called, what was it? Fuck. It was just in theaters. X. Did you see X?
Oh, I did actually. Okay, so full disclosure, I fell asleep for a bunch of it because I was home and I was real stoned. But of it, what I saw of it was good. Mm-hmm. It had a pretty cool twist at the end. And the director forcing everyone to watch fucking Pearl get fucked was, that's worth the price of admission, basically. But no, well, so the cool thing about that movie, because again, I thought that it was pretty well done. It was, as a period piece, it was well shot. I thought that, they definitely nailed the aesthetic. Oh, yeah. And the actors, I think, did a good job. But again, of what I saw. But I think what's really cool is, because one thing that's obvious, the husband and, because I can't remember his name now, but the husband and Pearl are so obviously wearing prosthetics. Like and I feel like that was obvious because they made Pearl at the same day they made X. Like the prequel movie that's going to be coming out.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
No shit.
No.
Well, so yeah, that movie was apparently made like the exact same day or directly after. Like they made one after the other. More or less. And it's supposed to be like a story about Pearl, like how she becomes who she is. Cool. And it's like, I thought it was good because it definitely was like, it was a metaphor movie for sure. But like, it did have some, like, when that girl got her fucking hand blasted with the fucking hammer, that was brutal, man.
Yeah,
like,
it was some good violence.
Want to know what that actually reminded me of a movie that I feel like it's violence and just as a movie in general, it's a cult classic now, I think. But Green Room
is so good.
there's violence, and she fucking box cutters this dude all the way open, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. You see his like innards.
Part where he tries to like grab the phone or whatever, and they like stab his arm and shit. Like that, the same kind of like just visceral, man.
And I gotta, like, going back to your music, I gotta say the way that you write about violence is similar to what you see in a movie like Midsummer, like Green Room, or X, because it's very close up, it's very anatomical and detailed.
And you want to know what? That has always kind of been. I just kind of rap how I talk. Like that's always kind of been my way. And I get caught up in my head sometimes about it because I feel like I should focus more on making it more musical as opposed to like, I'm not sure if vocal is the right word, but the point is that I've just always kind of done it like that. And on top of that, I have always kind of tried to have like an academic approach to like what I read, how I, what I consume, what I learn, and which I, not for nothing, that largely came to me after school for the most part. But within recent years, I will say the last 2-3 years or so, were heavily influenced by my going into the funeral program and briefly working in the funeral industry, which I will say, I think that it's a funny thing how it breaks down because in the funeral industry, you don't find like tough guy types really. Some of the embalmers can be a little whatever, but mostly you find people that are like in a different world. They'd have been a nurse or like, something like that.
It's very medical, like a very medical.
But the way that you have to deal with people, you have to have a very soft disposition. You can't be an asshole to people while you're burying their loved ones. You'll never fucking survive as a business. Yeah. The only way that you could is if you are in an area for a long, your family's been there for a long time. They have a relationship with everybody in the area, and people are just going to go to you anyway. Outside of that, like my point here is that so many of the people, like horrorcore people, they don't know what real gore and death actually looks like. It's because, first of all, it's not glamorous. That's number one. Number two, it's like, and I especially say this after having dealt with, gone into the funeral industry, being around, cadavers a lot. Fucking movies only occasionally get it right with stuff like that. Because don't get me wrong, it's not like I've seen people's body get blown apart in real time, but seeing the results of trauma, decay, like suicide, homicide, it's like the reality of it is always much less graphic than you'd think.
Yeah. Like
the idea of like cutting into the I'm trying to like right here to go for the common carotid artery. That's usually what you embalm through. It's not like when you cut in there. And keep in mind, there's blood still is all in the body. It's not going nowhere. But because it's not pumping, it doesn't come out through the skin when it opens. And then you go in there and you basically have to go through muscle and grab onto the artery. And like, it's not really bloody until you cut the vein and drain the vein, because that's all the embalming fluid has gone through the body. Yeah. The idea here being that, like when you get stabbed or if you get cut, like you're going to bleed, but it's not like blood coming out of a vein is a way different thing than fucking just, like get a nosebleed or you have a superficial cut on your arm. And I think that most people assume after having seen movies and seen TV shows and shit that, death is going to be, not death, but like, violence is going to have some kind of like, I mean, again, violence is a tough aesthetic. There's really not much there. But like I was saying, it's not like some, oh man, I just cut into somebody's body. It's like, all right, let's get this here. And like, it's very just mundane almost. Like, I mean, again, I got to be honest. There was even the time when we did the autopsy case, the post case, where the chest cavity's open, organs are over there, skull is open. You gotta, you're gonna have to clamp the skull shut so that it suture the skull back. Which that shit is tiring. Like looping and looping and looping.
That sounds
sewing
tedious.
Skull shut. Yeah, no, your hands get real tired. But it's like there was never a time, even when the dude, because his skin was sitting on his face, and we had to kind of move it a little bit to, get to the back, because the circle of Willis, when you're embalming, if it's an autopsy case, the circle of Willis, the embalming fluid and blood, it's going to leak out the back, which is like, it's complicated, but it's like the circulatory system that feeds your brain, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, like, even when we were trying to move that out of the way, and then his forehead kind of like folded a little bit as it was going forward, because it was just like he was like slipping off his skull, basically.
Oh, like the skin was loose.
Yeah, and it was never like, number one, it never like irked me or like bothered me. There was never even the smells. I expected the smells to fuck me up, but even that I tended to usually be okay around. But it was also never one of these things where I was like, oh, this is super cool, or like, oh man, look at that. And that's one of those things where, like, because of my OCD and my ADHD, I have a lot of fucked up intrusive thoughts. And so because of that, there's already so much horror floating around my brain. I have to really be in a good mood or hanging out with a girl that I want to fuck that likes horror, that to really just, oh yeah, sure, whatever, let's roll. I do still love horror, but my appreciation for it has vastly changed, which is the main reason why I like movies like The Witch, The Lighthouse, which The Lighthouse is horror-esque. It's not really horror, but it was great. I loved it. But Midsummer,
like
and
the A24 is kind
exactly,
of
I
kind of stuff.
I don't know though, because have you seen Men? Did you go watch that yet?
No, I'm not gonna see that one.
No, good call. Don't bother. It's just that movie. There was a review that my homie read while we were driving home from seeing it, and it was like, Men is a movie that tries so hard to be about one thing that it ends up being about nothing. There were some really, really good shots. Like there's in the trailer, you see her standing in front of the tunnel and yelling,
mm-hmm.
and or just making the noise. And fucking, there's like it comes all the way in, and the way that it does it, it was really cool camera work. Like there were some great shots and some good stuff in that movie, and it's obviously a heady metaphor for like Me Too type stuff, and like female victimization, patriarchy type of shit, like domestic violence. There's all types of shit in there. But the movie itself is so like, I just imagine the directors of these movies just jerking themselves off while they're watching the whole time, just like, because I see that you're trying to be profound. But
that's how that movie Lamb was. I just saw that movie Lamb.
I heard about that. That's another A24, wasn't it?
I think it was. It feels like it.
That's what I'm saying. That style of movie now is just like.
And then there's also Pig with Nick Cage, which wasn't even a horror movie or a revenge movie, which I thought it was going to be one of the two. But
I need to see that. You want to know what else I need to see?
You don't need to.
Okay, all right, fair enough. You want to know what I do want to see, which I heard about it a while ago, and I'm interested just because it's Lovecraft, but The Color Out of Space.
That's great.
I do still really want to see that. I saw The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent recently, which was amazing. But I also I was in Kansas City recently, and I saw on the hotel TV, it was I saw Nicolas Cage at the very beginning, so I'm like, oh, okay, fuck it, it's Nicolas Cage, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
It's called Joe. It's fucking crazy.
I haven't heard of that, actually. What's it
like
called?
Joe, Joe.
Huh.
And it's like, it's a wild fucking slice of Americana of just like poor white trash. And this one dude that's obviously lived in this area for fucking ever, knows everybody, and fucking, but he is a notorious scumbag. Like, the one scene that I remember that always stuck out to me was he goes to the hooker's house and she's got a dog that won't stop barking. and he's all pissed off. He needs the fucking release. So he drives screaming back to his house, gets his dog, puts it in the pickup, goes back, goes in, looses his dog on the other dog, goes upstairs, ravages the fucking hooker, and then at the end, fucking you walk out, he just says dog, I'm pretty sure. And then fucking dog follows him, and the other dog is just laying down in the fucking in the kitchen, and then they're driving back, and the dog is licking blood off its face. Like, fucking good.
That's gnarly.
There's another part where he's like, he flicks his cigarette lighter, that he's driving drunk as shit, or he's letting the 16-year-old drive while he's drinking, but yet still it's like a poignant moment. Like, he flicks the lighter and he's like, oh yeah, you got a lighter like this, then the hookers know you have money. Like, look, like, it's such a Nicolas Cage movie. Like,
I love him. Like, I love him.
He really is one of the best actors of his time. There's no question.
Yeah.
But Nicolas Cage is also, like, not for nothing, because I've only made this parallel right now, but if I ever can make it to any level of fame, that's what I would want.
Yeah.
So, like, how many people, because he's also super eccentric and just weird, but how many people can make have a movie made about themselves and not have it seem fucking self-aggrandizing?
Yeah.
Because it makes sense. Like, oh yeah, it's Nicolas Cage. He's a fucking character. Proceed. Yeah. Like, I don't know. He is definitely that movie to me, I would discuss now, because it may not necessarily be a horror movie, but it has elements of horror that I feel like actual horror movies miss out on. And here's a good example. Have you ever seen Irreversible? It's a Gaspar Noé movie. Okay. So, fire extinguisher. That's all I'm going to say. You remember that part?
Yeah. I watched it like a month ago for my third time or something.
Fair enough. I watched it a bunch of times when I first seen it years ago. My question is this. Would you consider Irreversible a horror movie? I would not.
On the network, we call those disturbing dramas.
Okay, fair enough. And you want to know what? To me, I don't. Well, so, and I'm being a little bit silly here, but I mean, you mean thrillers, right? Like, isn't that what a disturbing drama is?
Not quite, because even Happiness, I feel like, could fit into that. Like,
really? Okay.
Todd Solondz movies that, okay, we call them disturbing dramas if they fit into the extreme genre, but they don't have elements of like a standard horror film.
All right, that's fair. I mean, so see, I don't know, because I was about to say that you could almost classify Hereditary in that way, but Hereditary has demons and fucking magic and shit, so that's a bit of a different story. You want to know a movie that was made in that vein that I have not yet seen, that I imagine I would enjoy, but I'm probably not going to go out of my way to watch it unless it just happens to come on, is Mother, with Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem.
I saw that one.
Because I know the story, I understand what they're going for, and I think that's really cool, but most of the people that I know that's seen it, they're like, I mean, like I said, it's like they're jerking off the whole time, and then they rip the baby apart, and then it's like...
It is, yeah, but what I'd recommend for that one, watch it if you are, like, say you have the flu and you're kind of in a fever dream, and take some edibles, too. Take some edibles with the fever dream and watch that. You
want to know what? See, this is one of these kinds of things, because I feel like there's not enough stuff that they make like this anymore, because it's complicated to make it work on paper and on screen. I don't know that I've ever actually seen all of Jacob's Ladder. I think I've seen some of it.
Oh, yeah.
But
I always fall asleep, actually. I've fallen asleep during that movie like 3 times.
That's funny. But so, no, I'm trying to remember if the name of it was Perfect Blue. It was an anime that was in that direction. Are you familiar with that?
It's like a giallo anime, kind of.
Exactly. Well, so, but this is what I'm saying, is that idea of like that looping psychological, where like you don't know if you're in the present time frame or you're watching from whose perspective, or like, I really enjoy psychological horror like that, and I feel like there's not a lot of good psychological horror that, because not for nothing, most of the like really extreme horror usually just hinges on gore. You know what I mean? Like, August Underground, I think, is a really good example of that, where like those movies are fucked up on all imaginable fucking.
Well, it's the
films.
subject matter too, because they involve children and like
No,
fecal
I
matter.
mean, but that's kind of what I'm saying though, is that taking it to that level, it's all like, to me, that's a tough one because it almost feels like it almost feels cheap, by which I mean easy.
Yeah, I know what you
And
mean.
here's a good example. Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with the Vengeance trilogy, Park Chan-wook.
Old Boy, Sympathy, Vengeance.
Sympathy, first of all, Sympathy. It blows my mind that Old Boy was the movie that everybody remembers.
Dude, me too. I was always like, "What, you like that? You gotta see Sympathy."
Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is crazy, but I'll tell you right now, I saw Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, and I knew about it because I've been an anime nerd for a long time. And so when I, eventually, naturally, if you're a juggalo and you like anime, you're going to find horror anime. And so I found that, like, trying to remember exactly when we were talking about fucking Japanese horror, and somehow I fucking went off the rails there.
I got a huge stack of Japanese horror movies.
I was like, I'm trying to remember the point that I was making about Japanese horror, about how I even segued in there, but fucking
Korean, because you were talking about.
No, fair enough. Thank you. That's where we were.
We were talking about the Vengeance trilogy. Yeah.
No, so Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, I saw in the theaters in Philadelphia while I was living out there. There was a movie theater that played a lot of independent shit down the street from where I worked, so I'd go there after work occasionally. And I saw that movie in theaters and thought it was super fucked up. I eventually had children and watched it and had a fucking panic attack at the end of it. And I'm sure you know which part I'm talking about.
Of Lady Vengeance or Mr. Vengeance?
Lady Vengeance.
Oh,
when they're all cool and they're watching the videos.
I can't remember it that well. I haven't seen that one since it first came out, but I've seen Mr. Vengeance a ton.
Very long story short, they're watching the family of the kids that the guy killed are watching the videos of him killing their kids. Basically, because they're like, we want to make sure you actually want to do this. And because they're all getting ready to kill him. And the one scene that always fucks with me is the child, and it's a child, and granted, it's a child actor, fine, but it's a child standing on a chair with a bag over its head and a noose around its neck. The kid's crying. He sits down and he's like, no. And then he pulls the fucking chair, and I lost my mind.
Damn.
And because, again, it's you have children. Yeah. So whether or not this has happened for you specifically, I feel like eventually, at least in passing, it will. Just the feeling of seeing something where a child is affected or a child is hurt or a child is crying or sad, biologically, after you've had children, it'll affect you differently. I mean, if you are an involved parent that cares about your child, because, again, it literally is a biological change that you go through when you have children and endeavor to take care of them. People that have children and don't fucking claim them, that's a different story. But, like, for me, it's hard to see stuff like that now, or harder anyway. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I even think about it, like, I'm sure I could stand it. Like, I grew up watching literal snuff films on the internet. So, I've seen some shit.
Yeah.
But with that said, I'm probably never going to watch a Serbian film. Like, I don't feel like I need to see it.
Oh, wait, you haven't seen it?
I have not. It just never... When I had the internet and I was watching, like I said, I was watching snuff films and shit. And it was not easy to get at the time. You know, the internet wasn't quite as open as it is now. And so I never ended up getting to see it when it originally came out and was circulating. And now at this point, the way that it's been described to me, I just like again, it's quite frankly, when I think about it, it's basically on the level of that movie like Mother, where it's just like, if it's on, I'm not going to complain. If it, like, I'm somewhere and somebody's like, let's watch a Serbian film, I'll probably be like, really? This is how we unwind? But fucking, I would watch it. But
it's
my thing is,
I was going to say right now, you got to see it, and I think you're gonna love it if you like David Fincher movies, because it's
So let me ask you this. And by the way, I'd also like to say, based on the nature of this conversation, I would consider you something of an authority on this topic. So, like, in what sense do you feel like there's, because the point that I was making, and then, please follow up, is that I feel like shock for shock's sake, shock value for only the value of shock, I'm just not into it anymore. So, like, do you really feel like there's an overarching narrative or, like, there is aesthetic value to that movie?
That movie is an accomplishment, for sure.
Okay.
It's the first movie shot on 4K in Europe, first off, on the red camera.
That's interesting.
And so it looks really good. And the newest print that they just put out of it,
Imagine.
they just
we
put out.
We need to see that infant in full clarity.
Yeah. Well, the thing is I've seen the behind the scenes, so those scenes don't.
Didn't that dude fucking do time over that movie?
I think he's been just jail time. I don't think it wasn't like some Cannibal Holocaust shit where they locked.
Right.
Yeah.
They didn't put him into prison, but he has spent nights in jail.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking impressive in and of itself, don't you think?
Well, even people just screening it have been arrested.
Oh, wow.
And that's straight up in America too. So like,
it's a funny thing though, the way that these things break down as far as the actual specificity of things. Like, perfect example. Do you know the reason why? And I'm asking this rhetorically, but if you know the answer, please go ahead. Do you know why Cannibal Holocaust was actually banned in most countries?
No, not the main reason, unless it was the people disappearing.
There was a court scene. There was a court case where they had to go and prove that person wasn't dead. I will say that. Mm-hmm. However, with that said, the real reason why it was banned to be shown in a lot of different places, the uncut version, is because the scene where they kill that turtle, that's real. Yeah. That actually 1,000% happened. They killed that fucking turtle. And so most countries have, and I mean, in America, I feel like you probably get away with it, but in most countries, they have a thing against animal cruelty. You can't, that's why there's the whole, like with Milo and Otis, no animals were harmed in the filming of this movie because we were just throwing cats off fucking cliffs before.
Yeah.
So like,
there was stages of animal cruelty that were allowed. You look at Westerns and they were like putting every horse to sleep that fell.
No, obviously. Yeah. I mean, no, what I was saying was that, I just think that it was interesting, and it was a good bit of marketing because the movie obviously has made it into the annals of culture. But the fact that when it was being banned in different countries for that they just banned and fucking so forth because too graphic, too whatever. You want to know what? My thing is this: I prefer, because Cannibal Holocaust it's like exploitation, which is also why Eli Roth remade it with the Green Inferno, which I'm not mad at him because I get why he did it, but that's one of the worst fucking movies I ever seen in my life.
Can I jump in for a second? Can I jump in here?
Go right ahead.
I think the reason that movie is great, I think a lot of people don't understand that what it was kind of doing was poking fun at the state of horror at the time. Things were really serious. A24 just started putting out those types of movies. Okay. Everything was either a paranormal movie or like someone walking around in a house like scared of paranoia stuff. There was no gore really coming out in theaters, and there was no humor. So he put out something that was supposed to be kind of like a B Italian movie, not a Cannibal Holocaust, but more of like a cheesy, more of a not even.
You want to know what? And this is what I'll say. Maybe it's because of the way that I approached it. And I'll tell you like this, because as I can recall, my ex was super hyped about it. We've been hearing about it forever. I'm a big fan of Eli Roth just in general. A Jewish filmmaker, horror filmmaker. He's good at what he does.
You got some good lines about him too in your songs.
Yeah, I mean, come on. But to that end, here's a good example. I fucking hated Cabin Fever the first time I seen it. Fucking hated it.
That was like my favorite movie the first time I saw it.
But this is my point. Like I said, it's the way that I approached it. I approached it as a serious horror movie. And that very, very last part where he goes and gets the shotgun and gives it to the black dude, I should have known from that moment, like I wasn't refined enough at the time for in that moment for it to click and for me to be like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, and that's what I'm saying. The Green Inferno was presented, and maybe I just didn't look into it the right way, presented like it was going to be like one of his goriest, most fucked up movies. And now that you're explaining it this way, and again, like I said, I take you at your word on this. I think that like that makes sense because Eli Roth is clearly that kind of filmmaker who, like, you know, Hostel, I feel like, is where he was able to kind of pop his claws as far as doing really fucked up shit because it was, you know, it was pretty bad in certain spots.
But society was on board for hyper violence back then.
No, true indeed.
But
true
then
indeed.
when Green Inferno came out, people were not
all
ready
I'm
for
saying
violence.
is that, dude, that one scene where he screams, "He's got the munchies!" I like every once in a while. No, you want to know what? Here's a good example. Probably the worst movie. And by the way, we don't have to go all the way into this, but the point that I'm going towards is that the movie The Green Knight, I don't know if you've seen it. That was another one of these A24 movies that I was interested in because I kind of dig Arthurian legend, and it's one of those stories. But it was another one of these. It literally, the director was jerking himself off until the main character literally came on himself. Yeah. I'm not even making that up. That happens in the movie.
Yeah, I mean.
And but this is my point. Going back from that movie is tied with It Chapter 2 for worst ending of all time. And I will die on this hill. Get that plastic out of your mouth, you fucking moron. It Chapter 2 is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I fucking can't stand that movie.
I only made it 20 minutes in, man. It was so bad. I will know because you know the sad part about that, the kissing bridge part that they did was perfect. That part of the movie was flawless. Literally, that part of the movie was literally on screen exactly like I imagined it in my head. And I'm not even saying I'm the authority, but I think that as a person who always missed that from the visuals, they never did that in any of the movies. They never talked about it. And it was but homosexuality was a huge part of that story. And so to that end, doing that intro, I was like, when I heard they were going to do it, I was so fucking excited. And then the movie itself, they took Stan's suicide and they turned it into like a sentimental rally point for the losers to be like, oh, we all made it and we love each other. And like, they literally found a way to make a suicide a happy ending. I am not on board with that. Yeah, and there's a lot of problems. I mean, to me, it was the CGI that lost me because since I'm not dedicated to the book really. So for me, it was for the visuals, and the first movie lost me with the CGI, and
really,
yeah,
really,
yeah.
Wow, fair enough.
No, I mean I like the Tim Curry okay, but I don't like the new It's very much.
No, but I was under the impression that a large amount of the special effects in the new It movies were practical, but it's also with certain parts it's obvious they CGI'd the fuck out of it. Yeah. But I guess the difference here for me is It may have been my actual introduction to horror where I was like, this is the shit that I love. Like I found It before I found ICP. Yeah. So there is that. Yeah. But
might have been your gateway.
So, well, that's kind of what I'm saying is that for me, I have a lot of sentimentality built into that movie, or into that story. So, and I'm obviously looking through some rose-colored glasses there, but I feel like the problem with horror now is that the people that are actually good at conceptualizing and making it don't have the proper funding, and the people that do, they would rather continue to do something that they think works. The idea that movies like Lamb and Men have come out are a perfect example of that because the ending of Men is so fucking ridiculous. It doesn't make it's so fucking senseless. And it's like, yeah, there's some heady metaphor behind it, but it's like in The Lighthouse, the very, very end where he dies and it all has,
that was awesome.
Exactly. That was a good open to interpretation ending.
Yeah.
The ending of Men was an open to interpretation ending that was just fucking like, I don't even know. It was just ridiculous is what it was. But you want to know what? I will also say that the parallel to make between this and horrorcore is the fact that it's almost the inverse in horrorcore, in that the people that have the means to do it aren't actually, like, very few people making. Maybe it's not the inverse, but it's.
I think
like
it's kind of the same, actually.
Well, I'm just saying, in the sense that most of the people that actually have the ability to make thought-provoking horrorcore, they don't necessarily have the means, whereas the people that do have the, yeah, you know what? You're right. I'm fucking retarded.
Yeah.
It really is very much the same.
I would say you are very similar to a Peter Jackson making his, but I'd say you're past the bad taste stage. I think you have just made Meet the Feebles, and you're about to fucking make, what did he make? Forgotten Creatures, I think was the one that he made before.
Okay.
Right before he went into Lord of the Rings, because that's what I think you're about to do. I think you're about to, I can tell just the way the hype's building up, the way your name rings when people talk about it. And
that's a fucking,
also your social media reach is huge now.
I
know you've had your problems in the past, but
no, and this is what I mean to say is that first of all, it's crazy to hear that or be told that, because I really do all that I can to be an accessible and like outward person, because I mean, I have a resting bitch face for the ages. That is true. But I feel like I got lucky in a lot of ways with so many different things coming together to put me in the position that I am, because from my grandfather surviving the Holocaust to growing up in the suburbs like I did, and then eventually meeting gang members and learning about the streets and rapping, and everything that happened was so fucking random and weird for me that it put me in a position where, you know, horror is something that I really, like I said, I have enough crazy shit going on in my head all the time, so that's why I don't really feel the need to consume it as much. But like the horrors of reality is a good example, in so much as like songs and, you know, like content that I've done, where like I really do think most people compartmentalize actual tragedy and trauma and entertainment, where the conflating the two can, I mean, really be dangerous. I think that people that, and I'm not hating on anybody, but I feel like people that can gleefully consume horror like nonstop, I think that it's not good or bad. I think that it says something to the kind of attitude that this person has towards life, because I think it
shows they're trying to escape something, possibly.
Well, no, true indeed. And I think that it also means that in a lot of cases they're trying to kind of like, I don't know if muscle it down is the right way to say it, but kind of just dull themselves so hard, like, after what I've seen, this ain't gonna do nothing, let's go.
No, that was my attitude for a long time when I was watching Traces of Death and like, you know, when I first started watching all the Unearthed movies and stuff. Like, I'm gonna desensitize myself so bad, and then that took 2 seconds to do, and then now where am I at? Like, now I've seen Serbian film 10 times.
And this is what I'm saying, is that this is why I asked you the question I did about a Serbian film, which, not for nothing, I'm not exactly going to endeavor to watch it, but I do think that I will end up actually, because again, I had resolved not to watch that movie, basically, because again, I felt like the way that it's been described to me is that it's like, again, sophomoric, like there's not much going on there. It's just violence and horror for violence and horror's sake.
There's a lot different opinions though when you talk to Buzz from the internet, and then when you talk to
fair enough.
Filmmakers like J Hex Project or something.
True indeed. In this case, the opinion was gleaned over many years from many different people, most of which I would say I respect. Mm-hmm. And it was, again, the way it was presented to me, like Salo, 120 Days of Sodom, that's kind of in the same direction. I don't really feel like I need to see that.
Yeah.
Like the Marquis de Sade, I read, a good amount of the Marquis de Sade's work, and it's fucking crazy for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also where, like, I think, and this is why I use the line in Black, when in the house that Jack built, where he lines everybody up and he's trying to see how many heads he can get through. Like, that's clever. You know what I mean? Like,
mm-hmm.
and even if it's going to be like a gleeful gore romp, which things like, Terrifier or like, let's say Hatchet maybe, but, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. I just personally don't find as much, and not even entertainment value, but just, because again, if you're going to watch horror, I feel like there should be something there, like you should come away with it with something, which, by the way that it used to be when we were younger and when really good movies are made, is you come away with fear. Like, you leave the movie afraid, and I'm not even trying to jerk myself off by saying this, there's not many movies that do that to me anymore. I'll be completely honest. The last one to really do that was Hereditary. And the reason why is because it somehow found a way to materialize a paranoia that I've had for fucking a long time. Like,
I think of it kind of like horror movies are kind of like drugs, though. Like, you got your beer, which could be like your trauma. You got your fucking weed, which could be like your grindhouse shit. And then you got your fucking acid trip nightmares, which is more like your fucking Serbian films and August Undergrounds. And sometimes you want to fucking have a nightmare, and other times you want to just have a beer.
You know what? That's fair. That is absolutely fair. And I think that is, honestly, that's a better way to look at it. Because and not for nothing,
A24 would be a wine.
Yeah, you want to know what?
Maybe with a Quaalude or something.
Brandy, because you're more likely to actually get sick.
Yeah.
But you want to know what? See, okay, so my question, though, is like, at that level, what is the purpose of... Because, I mean, it's not like that stuff ever went away. Like, Ogrish.com became LiveLeak, and the dark web exists. So it's like, there's still all kinds of horrific shit out there.
Now it's the mixtape scene. I don't know if you've looked into that or heard of it, but now it's like DVD trading and stuff like that of like disgusting mixtape compilations.
Okay.
And like who can out-sick each other.
Right. So, and you want to know what? I think that in a way that's always kind of been part of the deeper community, but I think that now, because it's easier to do all of that,
anyone
like, think
can
about
it. Yeah,
exactly. Back in let's say in the 90s or the late 2000s, it was so hard to edit video and share things on the internet that it was the only people that were doing it were the people that were super, super, super involved. Nowadays, it's the cost of access is a lot lower and the means of access is less complicated.
Oh yeah.
So it's not a crazy, it's not that hard to do.
Yeah.
But with that said, I think that, like, see, I don't know, to me, that's the kind of stuff where, like, because, on a...
That's just not for me. I don't really like watching, like...
What I mean, though, is that, first of all, those movies get to a point where, I mean, again, a lot of snuff that exists out there is made by, like, cartels and fucking, like militias in war-torn countries. So these are fucking meant to be harrowing and fucking horrifying. Like, I will never forget. I can't remember when I seen it, but I saw this video once. It was a beheading video that had the quality of like a fucking high-end music video.
Yeah.
Like, they got the money to buy good cameras. They got the money to fucking buy editing software now, and that's what they're doing. Like, I'll never forget, they fucking slashed this fucking dude's throat over a fucking grate. And you see, like, again, the quality is so good that it looks like, oh, it's just a movie. This isn't gonna really, and then they kill that fucking guy. So at a certain point,
or the worst one I saw was the New Zealand church shooting that was all first person. Do you remember that?
I
didn't watch the whole thing because it like bothered me so much, but like the clips I saw fucked me up pretty bad.
I believe that. It's a funny thing because I'm pretty sure I had said it when I seen it on the internet, but I was like, it's going to be pretty fucked up when somebody finally puts a GoPro on the front of their gun and just goes and does a mass shooting. Because they have that, where they have a fucking attachment you can buy, where you can fucking load a camera onto your gun.
And they know that they're probably going to die doing it, so they have it live streaming, so it's going to be on the internet. They have that taken care of.
I didn't actually see that one, and again, I didn't exactly seek it out, because like I said, I'm not in the same consumer space that I was with that shit.
Yeah,
it's like I feel like I can stomach it. It's just
it's not good for your soul. It's not good for your soul. I don't watch it either. I honestly, to tell you the truth, the clips I saw were on the news. So it's like I saw shit. I only saw like the beginning of it and maybe a couple people laying on the ground, but that was enough for me. I play so much first-person video games that when you juxtapose that with like my mind seeing video games, I'm like, dude, this is way too close to a video game, and this person is just treating life like fantasy.
Well, see, and that's kind of the thing, is that this is the reason why I feel like horrorcore as a genre has a hard time, because the majority, and unfortunately, whether or not we're talking about the majority of people that are good at it or the majority of people that do it, the reality is that by and large, the majority of genuine horrorcore artists don't have a level of skill with lyricism to the point where it can attract the casual hip-hop fan. And that to me is a big thing, because to me, what is more horror than than poverty, death, and addiction and mental illness in the inner cities? That shit is fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
If for anybody that's ever lived it, anybody that's ever seen it, that shit is fucked up.
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like that world, mostly the entertainment that they consume, they don't tend towards horror. They don't want to alleviate their suffering by suffering more. Some people want to do that.
One thing that's kind of crazy is my wife, she's from Indian Reservation in Montana, which is it's a fucking,
what tribe?
It's Wolf Point is the name of the town, but it's Fort Peck Indian Reservation. She's Sioux. But
no doubt. My kids are Mi'kmaq.
Oh, okay. But it's a fucking nightmare there. Like I would be so scared to just take my kid there for a weekend. And but it's weird because a lot of people there love horror, and I'm like, man, I would think that people on your res would hate horror. And she's like, no, people are stoked on it.
So I don't know. Natives are a little bit different though, just because I will say, I feel like in the black community, horror, and this is, by the way, I think that this is a legit opinion in the sense that Jordan Peele is being considered a luminary of the genre for the fact that he's a black director who's making hit horror movies. Like, and they're not hits because Jordan Peele made them. Jordan Peele came up as a comedy guy.
Yeah, he usually produces them too. Like, he usually leaves it to a lot of other people too. And
well, I think that he does produce a lot of great movies, but the ones that he makes, like, I cannot wait to see Nope.
Us and Get Out were really good. I did not like Candyman, which he wasn't directing, but
really,
yeah,
you didn't like it?
No, it actually kind of like irritated me.
I don't know what I thought that for what it was good. But I also totally understand any grievances, because it did kind of, like, the original Candyman was a moment in horror movie history. Like, absolutely one of the best stories aesthetically, the performances. Tony Todd, frankly, it makes me sad that they didn't want to use him more. And I do kind of get it, because Tony Todd's performance can be very rigid at times, but I think that if they didn't put him at the end, the movie would have bombed. Nobody would have gone and seen it. Like, the first crop of people would have been the end. But I see, that's my thing. I also, again, have a lot of sentimentality on that movie, not just because of the time frame of it, but I have a song. I haven't actually put it out yet. You know what? Fuck, I'm glad I thought of this now, because this is something I can have Crossworm work on. I made a song called The Writing on the Walls, and I maintain to this day, I may have put it out to some capacity and somewhere out there. It might be out, but I don't think I did put it out. And again, I genuinely believe it's one of the best songs I've ever done, but the hook doesn't sound right because I can't sing. So that's why it's not out yet. But it's the concept of urban legends and the writing on the walls is just like it especially again with horror. It's the kind of thing that's one of the reasons why horror is so great, because it gives you reason to like think differently about what you might do or where you might go. Because like, remember that shit? It's like, oh no, that was just a movie. Like, yeah, it was a movie, but that came from somewhere.
Yeah.
Even all fantasy came from somebody's head. They were inspired by something fucked up that they saw. And it's like horrorcore music, that's the main reason why I hold to it so hard. Like, I'll keep it real with you. I want to, as an artist, get the fuck out of the horrorcore scene. I don't know how long you've been around it or been part of it, but the actual scene of horrorcore music is a fucking cesspool. Most of the people that do it,
Well, it's just tiny.
not only just that, first it crabs in a bucket mentality to say the least. But the problem is that, number one, nobody really wants to work together with anybody, and nobody wants to be the fucking like the collaborator, I guess. Like, people don't want to work with each other unless you can get something out of it. And like I said, so much of horror is done for horror's sake, and there's just not that much behind it. And I really do believe that's what holds horrorcore back as a genre, because the mass appeal of horror, like, really think about it. Horror movies, hip hop. How is it that we're one of the smallest when horror movies, and that's not a small industry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fucking people that make horror movies. And like I said, yes, Halloween season is the time when it's most socially acceptable, but those movies come out year round. And whether or not horror is the subject, like, graphic content to me is what horrorcore is all about. The idea of like, no, fuck that. You're going to see this, and that's just how it's going to be.
And no restraint too.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, and that's a funny thing with me about horrorcore, like, for the fact that when the live stream last year, when that went down, like,
yeah, can you talk about that a little bit? Explain to the audience what happened.
Absolutely. So the long and short of it was that I had sent Billy my recording, which I recorded right here, and I sent it to him about a week in advance, maybe a week and a half. I can't remember. It wasn't exactly a week, but I gave it a week or so where I was like, listen, if you think that this needs to be better, then let me know. I will have her come back out. We will re-record it and we will do it again. Because I was a little self-conscious about it because of the way that I did it one take. I didn't bother to try to do it a second time. Not even didn't bother, but my kids came home, and I don't know if you've seen that fucking performance or not, but I was not about to have my daughter opening the door while I was choking a girl with a plastic bag.
I'm trying to see it. I was going to ask you where I can see it.
I have a copy of it. I'll send it to you when it also, I did post it on Vimeo,
okay.
But I wasn't going to post it on YouTube because I feel like that should get flagged immediately. But I have the Vimeo link. If not, I have it. I will absolutely send you a copy.
Cool.
I do remember having posted it where I basically said I was told that I botched it when I made this, that it wasn't that good. I was told that, and not by Billy, by the way, or anybody from Zool. That was not who had said that to me. It was somebody from their crew, but that's not important. Former crew, whatever. Anyway, it was fucking Rick Moll. In any case, the fact is that I submitted it with what I thought was a decent amount of lead time, and I said, if you need it to be better, then I will redo it. And I was told, no, it's all good. You ain't got to worry. We're off and running. And so then the day of, I get it was either a text first or a call, or he just called me. But Lee Carver hit me up, and he was like, hey, I just want to get right down to it. This is going to be stale, but the parent company of the stream.
And do you know their name? I haven't heard that name of that company yet.
Well, no, I would have to look it up. I don't remember the name of the company right now. As it was explained to me, that parent company they saw it and they were like, we think this is too extreme and we don't want to show this. We don't want to take part in showing this. And basically, Magic Ninja / Long Live Evil, whatever, decided that it was not in their best interest to cancel the entire event on my behalf. And so they went along without. And at that point, it's like, how I feel about it doesn't really matter, because the reality of the situation is it's business. Business just goes the way that it does. I haven't reached out to the parent company to ask them, was this really what happened? Because frankly, at this point, it just doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, I do this shit for the people that, like, really genuinely get down on it. And the way that I figured it was, it's not a live performance, so my usual intensity, you know, watching it on a screen is not the same. So I was like, what's something that I can do that will, like, help set my performance apart? And it also had some editing, which that wasn't my call, but when I watched it, I felt like it was okay. So I decided to leave it as it was. But there was also one thing, which I don't feel great about this part, but like I said, I did it one time through, and one of the songs I fucked up because it was still a pretty new song at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we edited it, and honestly, if I had known we could edit, I probably would have just done it again. But I fucked up the last line, so I didn't end the song. I fucked up the line. I got my last line out, and then we did like a little jump cut, and then right to the hook. And so, yeah, that was definitely not great. But like I said, that's why I hit him up with enough lead time. Like, listen, we can do this better. You know what I mean? Like, if you think that this ain't good enough, we can deal with that. But I was told it wasn't a problem. Ended up that it didn't get put on. I was given the reason that I was given. And, I mean, I have no reason to believe that they would lie to me. I haven't really had any experiences with them to think that that would be the case. But anything's possible, I suppose. At the end of the day, again, like I said, it's business. I have, you know, love for those guys, but we don't. I mean, we did talk, you know, to a certain extent some years ago, but we're not super close. Mm-hmm. So I'm not expecting this, you know, public brand to take a major hit potentially on account of, oh, well, they're cutting you for this. Because you want to know what? Yeah, solidarity is all well and good, but they all got kids. This is how they feed their families, as far as I know. So at that point, you can't expect them to be like, oh, well, yeah, for the culture, bro. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not. So at that point, I'm not sour about it. I'm not, like, you know, upset about the way that it went down. Mm-hmm. Everybody long live evil, more or less, are my people. And so at the very least, I have love for them. And so, you know, to that end, it's unfortunate that it went down the way that it did, but I just kind of look at it where it's just going to be another part of the story. Yeah. Eventually, of just like,
it got your name out there a little bit too, because I mean, there was some buzz going around, people being like, hey, that ain't right, man, it's fucking horrorcore, you know? So
I mean that is true, but somebody being from having a boots on the ground perspective of something like that, it wasn't really that much of a pop, number one. And number two, it was just, to me, it was upsetting for the fact that, like I said, I'm not upset with anybody at Long Live Evil over this at all. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely upsetting for, like you said, this is horrorcore. Like, we are aiming to do shit fucking violent. And to a certain extent, like, a Forever Face is what? A caricature, in a sense, of somebody's severed face.
Yeah.
So they were like, we can accept that, but actually seeing somebody, having violence done upon them. Whereas I'd like to point out, and I also will say, it's not like it was done on purpose, but I do think that it speaks to the level of non-real violence that was occurring. Her legs weren't restrained. I didn't realize this until after we finished, but she could have just stood up and walked away. So at that point, it's like, this is a fucking fantasy.
Yeah.
This is meant to be like, and I will also say, there is a lot of science behind, or, at least a science and also testimony behind the idea that, like, rape survivors and trauma survivors, in a lot of cases, the way that they cope with their trauma is consuming graphic, violent material because they get power over it. Like when they feel too much, click, done.
Well, there's a lot of people in our scene that write lyrics about rape, and you're like, man, you talk about rape too much. It's like, because I've been raped, motherfucker. You know, like.
And you want to know what? My thing is that I don't ever use things gratuitously. I try to only use things if it serves a narrative. Like, I don't make a lot of rape bars. I don't make a lot of, like...
You've used it as an allegory a few times, but you don't ever talk about doing it as a person.
Well, and this is kind of my point, is that I'm not saying I've never... I definitely got some fucking, you know, like... real motherfucking talk, like I'll rape your mother, scrape and cut her and leave her on her face in the gutter. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's definitely... And that, I wrote that.
Okay, I forgot about that one.
I wrote that in like 2006, something like that. I did Devil's Rejects. There you fucking have it. Like, there was something that you had said in the question, something about my delivery on Devil's Rejects.
Yeah. It sounded like you were trying to like kind of hold up to Stitch Mouse level a little bit. Like you were a little bit more metal, I would say.
You want to know what? What I will say is this. At that time...
For people that don't know, he was in a group with Stitchmouth, Loki, and the Wicked One. Is that correct? And they were called the Devil's Rejects, and they put out an album in 2005, I think. And it's a classic, man.
It's funny with that album because basically the idea for it was, I think, fucking Loki and his it was either his girlfriend at the time or whoever it was he was talking to. And they were like, what would be like an underground Dark Lotus? Because Dark Lotus had like just popped off at the time. And so the idea based on who we were working with at the time was Stitchmouth, Low, Wicked, and me. And I will be honest, I definitely tried to be as graphic and blasphemous as possible on that album. Like on that album, I tried to be gratuitous. So much so to the point, that I have genuinely thought, if someday I ever do get famous, I got some splaining to do. Because there is some graphic shit. Watch me fuck the skull of Christ. Why did you say that, Max? You want to know why? Because we're talking about it now. I swear to God, that's the only reason. Well, because like, no bullshit. It's one of those kinds of things where I do appreciate that kind of stuff. And I do not devalue people who adamantly hate Catholicism and the Catholic Church, Christianity, religion in general, oppression through religion. That I take nothing from people like that because I'm with them. I'm on that side. But I think that there is something to be said with a lot of stuff where people will get to a point where they will just go intentionally dramatic is what I've been coming to call this, is where you don't necessarily feel that way, but you know people will react a certain way if you say it, and you say it that way. So that's what you do. And I think that a lot of people, when they're younger and they find horror, if they're disenfranchised and they're not, like, they don't have like a lot of community or feel like they have a lot of community, then they'll kind of fucking devolve into just, I want to just only be with this, and I only want to, because this is subversive and this is, like weird and different, and I want to do it that way. Yeah. Which I was given to those impulses for a long time. Like, so don't think I'm saying I'm better than
that's a lot like how the black metal kids are and stuff. It's like that. I don't like anything but black metal.
That's exactly. It's funny you would say that, because that's the parallel that I was trying to make. I just wasn't making my way there. Was that, like, a lot of black metal and a lot of death metal, like some of the artists and a lot of the fans, like real gatekeeping type shit, where they're like, this is what I listen to, and if you want to listen to it, then you got to prove your allegiance to it. And it's like, I'm not even saying there's necessarily anything wrong with a little bit of that. I mean, I am a juggalo, so there that exists for sure. But I think that when you people take it to an almost cartoonish level. Yeah. It feels to me like there is a just disconnect when like you have something that has this like cult underground following. I totally get being protective of it.
Or they're just the people calling everyone juffalos if they don't feel like they
you
fit
want to
the
know what?
mold.
See, that's one of those things where if you've been a juggalo long enough, man, it's just a progression. It cycles through where if you've been around for like there are very few juggalos that I have met that got down within the original Joker's Cards era. Like when I came up, I found ICP in Malenko. It was 1997. That was when they got their big jump, their big burst, and that was how I knew about them. And then as time went by, the more that I started to actually get involved, Bizarre Bazaar was the first show that I went to, December 2nd, 2000. And so at that point, getting on at Bizarre Bazaar, because that was a big time too. They got a lot of press during that era. And so like that was their MTV era.
They were all over the place at the mall back then.
Exactly. And so what I'm saying is that back then, if juggalos that had been around since like Ringmaster, Riddlebox, that was a little bit more common to see back then, like in passing, you were whack. You hadn't been around long enough. You ain't real. You ain't down. Twisted Carney Posse, that was their whole fucking, you ain't down, that whole shtick. Psycho Jesus and them back in the day, just making fun of that's what I'm saying. The juggalo community, most of the people that have been down for a really long time are either one of two things: extremely welcoming or not active. Yeah. Because to me, if you're still a juggalo after 20 plus years, you gotta love this shit.
Yeah. Because
this community kind of sucks.
Yeah.
A lot of the people in the community suck. A lot of the fucking high level, if you want to call it, because I'm going to also throw this out there. The idea of an elite juggalo is the most paradoxical bullshit idea. And people fucking live by that shit. Like, I know people or whatever, I do this and that, or I've been to this many gatherings. It's not what this is about.
It's also funny when you're getting people are trying to scam you from the bottom and from the top. You're like,
oh my Lord.
It's like, whoa, you guys are like pulling the same scams, but like you're like everyone knows you, and you're like no one knows you.
This is exactly why I fuck with the people that I know, and I just do my thing and let it. That's the one reason why I give myself any credence as far as. Like you were saying, to your eye, apparently, I don't feel like you're lying to me, that like my social media presence is out there. My music is starting to make more momentum. Like this is what you say is that I just don't ever see it that way, where like, I literally feel like it could get to a point where I was making $1 million and I would still be like, am I actually popular? Like, is this really happening?
That's how success always is though. Like
fair enough,
you hit that first like maybe 1,000 listens or whatever, you're like, oh, holy shit, and then after that it's diminishing returns.
So that right there is a big thing for me, where my Spotify has been at roughly, and it's been growing lately because I have had people behind me on the social media train, which I think is a positive indication, but that it's going up now that I have somebody able to actually take care of these things. I think roughly between 1,700 and 2,000 monthly listeners, which what that means is 1,700 to 2,000 people roughly play at least one song a month. And that's not very much. There, interestingly enough, Fuck Life remains my most popular song. That's always been true.
That's so
and
weird.
Well, it's really not when you think about it, because the songs that are otherwise,
that's off their first album, right? Am I wrong?
Correct.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying, is that per capita, from as long as it's been uploaded, because I uploaded in the Absence of Sanity only a couple years ago, Fuck Life is still one of the most streamed and most popular songs. And the reason for that is the same reason it was true on YouTube, is because depressed people would type in the words fuck life, and that's pretty specific. It's right there. So at that point, because like I said, I uploaded that song, and per capita, it gets more streams than any other song I have out. And I eventually am going to do Fuck Love, which I know is going to have the exact same effect. But my thing is that, like, I'll tell you right now, man, my next album, Kaleidoscope, is going to be, it really is. Somebody pointed out that UTU is my least horrorcore album to date, which there is a lot of truth to that. But UTU is more like a mixtape to me because it's a cover. You know what I'm saying? It's a cover of The Rising Tide. So to that end,
I don't know
feel
what
like
The Rising Tide is. I was wondering what that was.
So Fort Minor, do you know who that is?
Yes. Linkin Park related?
Mike Shinoda and Styles of Beyond
Uh-huh.
made the Rising Tide, which to me is a perfect album. And that's the reason why I covered it. Because it's a no-skip album, which interestingly enough, I also felt that way about pretty much every Linkin Park album up to, well, Hybrid Theory and Meteora, those two. I didn't really listen that much after that. However,
those are the only ones I liked.
True indeed. So that being said, The Rising Tide is a no-skip album. It's basically perfect. And that, again, that's why I covered it. And to me, though, like I said, it's more of a mixtape. Kaleidoscope is one of my first LPs, because I'll have to count again, but I think it's like 13 songs. It's very, very personal. Like, it's a very personal album, which Dead Leaves was very personal with I Hate Myself, but other than that, like Where the Wild Things Are, that's just Where the Wild Things Are.
That's kind of like a crunk album. I said that's kind of like your crunk album.
It's funny you would say that, just because the producer, I think, is the reason that's true. Because,
but you're going wild on it though, like you're going crunk on that shit.
Interesting. I need to find these songs. Sidebar Association of Cryptic Wisdom. He did this contest. So, not only Cryptic Wisdom, but Dubs as well. There was this contest, who's the illest? And he was trying to get like Alien Nation or some shit like that, trying to make this website go. And it was all these songs, and it was like, you put your verse on these songs, there you go. I need to get those songs. But so I did like 6 or 7 of them, like 8 of them maybe. And I killed those fucking tracks. Those were good, which is why I'm saying I need to find them. But so I won, obviously. And with that, one of the prizes was, I think, 6 beats or something like that from Tristan on the Track. That's who did all the beats on that album except for 2 of them. And then I was like, you want to know what? Let me pay you for a few too, so that I can, because I want to build an album around these beats. And that's what I did. And, excuse me, the other 2 beats I got from this guy, Cartier Beats. I don't even remember how I found this guy, but that was the first track and the last track. And so fucking, paid him for him. And then that was that. But then fucking, it was just interesting how having the ability to, it wasn't like he even produced all the tracks, but the fact that they were almost all from the same producer, they had very similar, like, you can see an artist's brush strokes in every painting.
Yeah. So it's more fluid. The album would flow.
And not for nothing, that is one of the things that I am most excited about with Dirtcore, is the fact that, like, Crossworm just sent me a bunch of beats today, and I was going through them. And first of all, they're good. But
congrats for the Dirtcore connection, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It really felt like a no-brainer when he hit me up about it, because the main thing is that what basically happens here is I'm making some projects specifically for Dirtcore, that's for sure. But it's also, Dirtcore is Crossworm. He is the one who has always maintained Dirtcore, and that Dirtcore has taken on a lot of shapes and a lot of different forms over the years. They've done a lot of different things. I feel like such an asshole. I wish I could remember the name of the band that Crossworm was fronting for a bit. That was also part of Dirtcore. There was where he had the mask that was kind of weird. That was another, like,
I kind of remember that kind of stuff too. But it's just...
Well, so that's what I'm saying, is that, he's done a lot of different shit over the years. But one thing that's always been really consistent about him is that his reputation as an engineer, someone that mixes and masters and makes beats, has always been super solid. Like, he's always been, not to mention, he was the one that got put in charge of doing fucking Devil's Night. when I think it was Mad Insanity. I'm pretty sure Mars was doing that for a while.
Yeah.
And then when he decided he didn't want to do it anymore and Crossworm picked it up, I think he revived it was what happened at the time. I don't think that he's done it in a few years.
He did a
Maybe
2010 song, I think, with you, right?
Well, there was my songs on Devil's Night. The ones that I've done for Devil's Night have been some of the best songs I've ever done. Case in point, I maintain that Violent Crimes with No Explanations, whether or not if it's one of the better songs that I've ever done, because I do think it is good, I do think that conceptually it's the most horrorcore track I've ever done. Because Violent Crimes with No Explanations is just like straight up and down. Like, to me, the line, "You can see true terror in a form so sheer, burn your family tree and chop it until it disappears."
Mm-hmm.
See, because that, to me, what that lyric was supposed to be meant was like, I will remove your family from this earth. Like, your entire bloodline will be gone. Like, that's
on some necro, like some necro, like gore rap, gore.
Or like, I see. Oh yeah. By
Death
the way,
rap. That's
like, I fucking like, oh yeah, showing him the fucking poster, like, oh, I got it from this one guy. He said he was your father. I told him I would let him know about all your whereabouts, or if I heard about your whereabouts, where you were trying to go. I seen a girl crying in the window. I rolled by full wave so she knew I was looking. Yeah, I think it was your sister. Whatever, though. I'm going to get her, then I'll bring her back, and then you can let me know. That's fucking crazy. And, like, I'm pretty sure I made that song at his behest. Like, he mixed that song, which is why it still sounds good this many years later. Like, again, one of the main reasons that I'm looking forward to working with him is that this is the first time in my career where I've had the ability to, first of all, I have recording equipment here that my raw vocals are solid. Like, it's good. And so to that end, I have a producer now who can make anything I want. I can just I can be like, oh.
His last LP had some of the best production I've fucking ever heard.
Well, so that is so Halloween is over?
No. When I was saying Crossworm's last LP.
Oh, right.
The production
no,
of it sounds like Nine Inch Nails or something. It's like,
well,
crazy.
That's what I'm saying, man, is that Crossworm has had some of the most consistent.
But yes, Halloween is over has good production too.
Well, no, thank you very much. I was just going to say I recorded that with the homie Casper over at Paint the City Black Studios in Brockton, where that was also where I did Dead Leaves. And he's really good. Like, he is super solid. And I like to work with him where I get a chance. But again, like I said, with having Crossworm available to the point where basically we're building here, where we're making shit, and then it's just like, all right, we're going to put this up. You get a piece, I get a piece, and let's fucking keep it moving. Just keep on doing it. Like I said, I genuinely, like this right here, Underground Sound, man, like, it doesn't get as much traction as it used to because there used to be a lot more people behind it. It's more so one of the guys that started it and me trying to continue to make it work. And fucking, it's just the cross section of hip hop and horror has not been properly serviced. And I think that is proven true in that Jordan Peele is making blockbuster movies and not doing it with a ton of CGI and a ton of, he's just, you've seen Us, right? The way that they flipped, I got 5 on it, and the way that they put on "fuck the police" when she tried to call the police,
mm-hmm.
and then just like that level of shit has not really been done. Like, a lot of people, if they were going to talk about horror and hip hop, they would either talk about Bones or Leprechaun in the Hood, or if they were cultured, they might say Tales from the Hood. Because I will say this, Tales from the Hood exists to this day as not only one of the best hip-hop horror movies in existence, because in my opinion it is that, number one of the best horror movies ever made. And this is why. Not just because it was scary, and not just because it was effective, and not just because it was gory in certain sections, and because it was like fantastical and creepy, but because it served a fucking narrative. Mm-hmm. The narrative in Tales from the Hood was like talking about police brutality. So the opening story was they're fucking killing a politician and shooting them up with heroin and dumping them into fucking water and being like, oh, he was high on heroin and he died. And this dude knows what happened, but he couldn't say nothing because of the thin blue line.
And that montage at the end, I forgot what song it is, but that montage at the end when they're like,
"Oh, Spice One, Born to Die."
That's it.
Spice One is one, and not for nothing, bro. Thank you for mentioning that, because when just the other day, and it's so cool to me too that apparently from when I met him, his smile was enormous, and everything that I've heard about the man has been positive. X-Rated is one of the original horrorcore rappers. Do you know why that is?
Why?
Because he was just rapping about his real fucking life. And if you listen to his tracks, that shit's fucking grimy. I seen videos.
It was a little over the top, though. He did go into fantasy aspects at times.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that X-Rated did not go all, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is I have seen a video of X-Rated getting fucking shanked on the prison yard. A lot. And he lived. Obviously, I just seen the end of his set. I feel bad that I only made it towards the end. I fucking forgot that he was playing. And then I was like, wow, I'm an asshole. It sucks that I'm missing this. You know what, though? If fortune smiles upon me, he'll play The Gathering. In any case, fucking horrorcore was like, who's one of the other, like, if you search horrorcore in the sense of actual legitimate Def Jam hip-hop history, one of the only groups that's genuinely referenced in that is the Ghetto Boys.
Yeah. They
are often credited with, creating horrorcore. We can debate that, obviously. I would say that Esham was probably more so, acid rap had a lot more to do with the creation of horrorcore than the Ghetto Boys. However, the Ghetto Boys was genuine horrorcore, and the reason for that is because fucking Bushwick Bill is on the cover with his face blown out.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong,
the Gravediggers was 91, which was...
you want to know what, though? My problem with the Gravediggers was the fact that, you want to know what? In my opinion, the Flatliners are much more genuine horrorcore than the Gravediggers. Because to me, the Gravediggers was RZA trying to make horrorcore music, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The Gravediggers were dope. They were great rappers in there, and the one album that they made was fucking, that's an iconic hip hop album.
Prince Paul was the mastermind that was kind of collected the three guys together and did the horrorcore thing.
So that's my mistake then. I was always under the impression that RZA was much more.
RZA did some actual production on the first album, but a lot of the actual production was Prince Paul on all of it, or at least on the first two. It was just Fruquan and Too Poetic on after the first two albums.
This is more so my point.
Yeah, sorry, I'm obsessed with the Gravediggers. So
no, fair enough, bro. And because
but I just wanted to say they do have some basement shit that goes a little bit like earlier and makes it debatable on who's first.
Fair enough. No, fair enough. I was not aware of that. But what I was going to say was that I find the Flatliners to be much more genuine horrorcore than the Gravediggers were.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, number one, they've immersed themselves in the culture. It's like that you will see the Flatliners playing horrorcore shows. Mm-hmm. That is mostly who that is.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And they have been, ever since the beginning, they were super underground. When they came out, hip-hop was still kind of new, and that's why they were able to get the notoriety that they were able to get back then, because I personally believe they were really subversive, and that's hard to make happen in, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the only other time I've seen it happen, and it sucks because I feel like if it had happened for the Flatliners like this, they would be much bigger than they are right now, is Odd Future. Odd Future did that in a way where they did really crazy, subversive, graphic, because a lot of people don't remember that, but back in the early days when they were fucking with Creation and...
Yeah, they had to tell people they weren't horrorcore pretty much because everyone was calling.
Yeah. Suicide Boys were the same thing.
Yeah.
Suicide Boys literally have a song or even an album maybe, literally that is titled Stop Calling Us Horrorcore.
Yeah.
That literally is a thing. And my thing is, I get that. Because the Suicide Boys, they came up just as like straight 3-6 street grime hip hop, like Memphis hip hop. Like, now granted they were from New Orleans, but that being said, they were, you know, living that shit for real. And they fucking were making music that they were more flow oriented. That's why they were able to pop, if you ask me, because their songs were much more, you could flow to it, like you could bounce your head to it. That's much more what music is now.
It also caught a wave at a perfect time, I think.
No, oh, true indeed. I don't disagree. They also had a really solid grassroots movement, and they were punk rock as fuck. That was what they did, was super punk rock, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's dope. I want to get down on that." Yeah. My oldest daughter's, my stepdaughter's first concert was Suicide Boys, just recently, because I introduced her to them however long ago. We were on a car trip. She was like, "Play something," and I usually just listen to lo-fi stand-up comedy, but they want to listen to common stuff. I think we put on Post Malone for a bit, but I only like 2 or 3 of his songs. So then put on Denzel Curry. I like the Taboo. I really like that album. But Denzel Curry is somebody I would really like to work with, because he has the ability. He could make a really good horrorcore album if he wanted to. Denzel Curry would make a nasty horrorcore album if he wanted to. Which is why you don't know who Denzel Curry is?
No, I don't listen to a lot of mainstream music.
Okay, so Denzel Curry's not really mainstream.
Okay.
He's mainstream in the same way Puya and Suicide Boys are mainstream.
Oh, okay.
So to that end, Denzel Curry, his older shit, he was doing more like, and I found this out through Pandora, he was doing more like boom bap, like fucking like bar hip hop.
Okay.
But then as the time went on, he started doing more flow oriented, like bounce shit, because he's from Florida. And fucking, I'm pretty sure him and Puya do have songs together, but Taboo, the album, like the way that each song is titled, like it has the name of the song, and then the song is written in like the numbers or letters. Each song is done that way. Mm-hmm. And he paints his face on the cover. And I remember some juggalos kind of talking shit when that came out, and it's like, okay, fine, I get it, but we don't own face paint. And again, he's actually a good artist. Like he has had a little bit of mainstream popularity, like I said, same as, you know, Suicide Boys or Puya or Fat Nick or whatever, Ghostman. But the fact is, he's like a really solid hip hop artist, and
I'll check him out.
Again, the album Taboo, that's the one that I heard that I really enjoyed. A lot of his other stuff, I can't remember the other one where it's like, my daddy said, trust no man but your brothers, and never leave where you find yours in the gutter. My mom said, trust no hoe, use a rubber. That like he killed that shit. That was good. But that album was dope too. But like I said, I've been preferring his newer shit to his older shit. But Taboo is my main album with him. But no, I also feel like horrorcore. It's like, it's a funny thing, because doing horror in music is not that crazy of a thing. Like Rihanna did Bitch Better Have My Money. And that was like, she fucking killed a guy. She's walking around half naked with the fucking dead bitch in a bathtub smoking a bong. So, and the end of the video, she's covered in blood holding a bunch of money.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty fucking hardcore to me.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
You know what I'm saying? It's not to say that was horrorcore. What I'm saying is the horror aesthetic is not like I said, it makes me sad, because I don't want to be a shit talker and, you know, act like I'm above anybody. It just, this is why I say it's upsetting to me that horrorcore is hindered as an art form, because so many of the people that do it are fucking, like, not only just shitty human beings in a lot of cases, but bad artists. Mm-hmm. Like, they're in it for the wrong reasons. They're not that good at what they do to begin with. And they pull attention because those kinds of people are willing to cutthroat. They're willing to step on other people. They're willing to, you know, be dishonest, more or less.
Like how sociopaths are always heads of CEOs and shit.
Yeah,
you know?
No, exactly.
That's how rappers also get ahead.
Oh, yeah. And so to that end, it's just like, horrorcore has some really solid names in it. Like Lyrical Snuff Productions. I was just talking to fucking, I texted Scum today, and it really speaks to a level of respect, I guess, for the fact that he hit me right back. And it was, granted, there's another thing that I do
Scum's
love about
too
him.
nice. Scum is...
I
feel like there's like 10 Scums because there's no way that one person can be that nice.
He is all business. Like,
yeah.
I had hit him up on some shit because there's a track that I was hoping him and Psycho could do. And, you know, I'm pretty sure they're down. We just got to iron out the specifics. But fucking, again, just very, very to the point, very, like, that's why Lyrical Snuff is able to do what they've done over these years. Because, number one, Scum made it his life's work, and he made it his livelihood. And that's straight up and down how it is. And to that end, he obviously loves this shit, because the stories that he's told me, that man has spent more time on the road now. He would have to stop touring for 10 years, and I would have to tour like Tech Nine is touring to be able to get the amount of time on the road that he's got.
I had a friend named Victor. Well, actually really wasn't much of a friend. He would just bully me whenever he could. Seems like it would never end. See, he would beat me up, steal my bike. Also cliche, but the next day he'd be knocking at the door like nothing, looking to play. I dealt with it cause nobody else liked me, and I thought that at some point he would calm down and not always want to fight me. But it turns out that he had lots of problems, and his family was cracked, drugs and alcohol and things like that. So I'll tell you this, he lived a fast life. Not the type to study much and always coming home late in the night. All the other kids thought that he was tight, even them high schoolers too. I guess everyone loves maniacs, that just has to be true. Time passed and I did too, finally moved out of that town. It's a good thing too, one more year and I would've burned it down. I'm serious. Anyway, time just kinda tick-tocked, and it isn't like after I left either one of us ever talked. I don't know what he was doing, don't know the where, don't know the why, don't really care. He was just somebody that used to make me cry, so I read when I'd see his eyes, and little to my surprise, anybody else that would ever try send his voice into my mind. He made me a true cynic when it came to having my friends. I lost a lot because of all of the wrong signals I would send. Over backwards I would bend just to have someone around. I could be the peasant and you could wear the crown. I frown when I look back, but I guess karma is consistent, and it stays with you regardless of how long that you say it didn't. Cause this kid didn't even get to make it till 18. Drove a motorbike a little bit too fast going over a bridge and crashed into a tree. Truly a tragedy, and that's a fact, I can't lie. When he died I was stuck with a weird feeling inside. Was I glad that he was gone, or was I sad that he was young? That shit don't deserve to happen to anyone. Two divorced parents lost a son, a brother lost a friend, and all that I lost was a little feeling that someday I'd see him again. I won't pretend I didn't care, didn't cry. My sister did, I don't know why. They weren't friends, she knew him though. I guess it was just because he died. When she told me, I replied, why are you crying? She said it was so sudden and so surprising. Tried being upset but I just couldn't, cause every time that I did, all that I could see was the way he treated me when the both of us were kids. Does that make me a bad guy? Well, maybe it does, but I'm just not gonna feel sorry for what isn't and what was. If y'all believe in heaven, well, then I'm hoping that he made it, even though he was my enemy and the memory is faded. Cause sometimes they're always changing, and even when I hate it, this is life and I just get one, so it's always appreciated. Anything that happens was specifically for a reason, even if I don't know what it was by the time that I'm leaving. Believe it. Doesn't matter what you think about the song itself, it's the story that's important.